Sinai Desert in Egypt is the bridge between Africa and Israel. Thousands of refugees are traveling over 900 miles to cross it, trying to break into Israel.
It's a very long route, and a lot of people die along the way.
The refugees are fleeing Eritrea, one of the most repressive countries in the world.
This young man was at school when he was forced to join the army. He says he was badly tortured there.
They know if they're captured, they'll be sent back to torture and death in Eritrea. And some of the Bedouin gangs who smuggle them are now exploiting them.
Kidane is talking to a man he says is a hostage taker who's kidnapped over 20 Eritreans.
We were entering a secret world where people are risking their lives trying to find sanctuary in Israel. We arrived in Cairo, the capital of Egypt, just over a month after the revolution that toppled the regime of Hosni Mubarak. There were still signs of the unrest.
Egypt's in a state of transition at the moment following the revolution. The military's in control, and the police aren't fully back on the streets, which means it's the perfect time for criminals to take advantage of the situation.
We headed northeast into the Sinai Desert. It's inhabited by Bedouin Arabs. For years, they've smuggled weapons and goods to Palestinian groups in Israel and Gaza. But we'd heard reports they were now smuggling a new commodity: people. Our destination was a location deep inside the desert.
We've finally been given the go-ahead to visit a safe house where some migrants are being kept. It's such a secretive, well-organized operation. We had to meet whole networks of smugglers before we got permission to come here.
We were met by one of the people smugglers.
Salam, salam, I'm Ramita. Thanks for meeting us.
He said everyone here was fleeing Eritrea, a country in East Africa, nearly 1,000 miles away.
He's leading me into the house now. It's an incredible scene. You can see the sleeping conditions here. They're sleeping in rows. They're all covering their faces. We're being told to come into this room. And there are still more of them. And this is just one group who've been smuggled through Egypt.
There were 100 Eritreans crammed into 4 small rooms.
Last week, there are children here and family. Go to Israel.
Right. And how many women now in this room? I can't tell. One,
in this room, eat. In this room, eat.
The migrants were terrified of arrest by Egyptian border guards. The Mubarak regime regularly sent migrants back to Eritrea, flouting UN rules forbidding deportation to countries that torture.
People are very scared to talk to us here. We asked everybody, and they said they can't talk on camera. They're scared of reprisals. Their families are still in Eritrea. But these 2 men here, they said they'll talk to us anonymously.
Omar and Joseph had been in the hands of smugglers for over a month. They'd paid $2,000 each for their passage.
Explain to me why everyone is so fearful.
يظهر تم عالمي الصحفي حق العالم لو ظهر وشنا هناك.
Why are you all wanting to leave Eritrea?
نحن يمسكون الأهل حسن خاف زي ده مشكلة في إريتريا هو الحروب بعدين على كيفك ما بوليتيكا.
21-year-old Joseph told us the Eritrean regime forcibly conscripted men and women.
This young man was at school when he was forced to join the army. He says he was badly tortured there. He managed to escape to Sudan, where he wasn't welcome, and that's why his dream now is to make it to Israel.
A predominantly Christian country, Eritrea has spent decades at war with its neighbours, and it now has one of the largest armies in Africa. Conscription can be indefinite, and deserters can be tortured or killed.
أول مقدم لما طلعت من إريتريا قبلونا عسكر. من العسكر والله ضربونا النار هربنا خلال يومين في ايش اسمه في الصحراء معي كان اثنين نفر والله خشينا هناك في السودان الله ساعدنا خشينا السودان الرحلة أكعب رحلة في حياتي الرحلة دي.
Omar and Joseph's group had been here for over a week, waiting for the next stage of the journey. They weren't only risking arrest and deportation back to Eritrea. Egyptian border guards have shot and killed scores of migrants as they've tried to cross the border.
They're not allowed out of this compound here because it's too dangerous. There are lookouts as well, checking to make sure that nobody comes near here.
In the yard, we met Sami, who agreed to talk to us openly. He said he had no family left in Eritrea. Like many of the men and women in the holding house, he had also deserted the army. He'd been forced to serve for over 6 years.
Sami says any Eritrean can be forced to join the army from the ages of 15 to 55, and that includes women. You're only meant to serve for 1.5 years, but he says in reality, you can serve much more.
Torture, starvation and slave labour are commonplace. Sami had been so desperate to get out, he'd left with nothing.
He's been in the Sinai desert for 6 months, and that's because he hasn't paid up for the whole journey, and he's been trying to get the money together to pay the full amount so then he can be taken to Israel. Sami, how are you earning the money to get out of here?
He was working for the smugglers as a translator. He didn't know how long it would take to pay off his debt. Sami and the others are fleeing a country where arbitrary arrest is common and where tens of thousands languish in secret underground jails. Eritrea produces more refugees than almost any other country in the world. Nearly 2,000 people escape every month.
Looking at a map, you can really appreciate how remarkable this journey the migrants are making is. This is the border with Sudan, which is hundreds of miles south of here just to reach this point. Once they reach this point, they're smuggled all the way through the eastern part of the country, through the eastern desert here. They have to cross over the Suez Canal, the Gulf of Suez, and then they've got another journey through the desert in Sinai. Finally, they make it to the border with Israel.
For the refugees, Israel promises safety and prosperity. While its Arab neighbours are in turmoil, Israel has one of the fastest growing economies in the world. The Bedouin smugglers are the only way of getting there, and one of them agreed to tell us how it was done.
We've just arrived at a clearing in the middle of the desert. We're about an hour's drive from the nearest town, and we've been told that our meeting is up ahead. I can see a tent and a fire.
Abu Suleiman is the mastermind of a people smuggling ring, transporting migrants into Israel. He's been doing it for 3 years.
When Africans are smuggled, how does it work? How do they get through the whole country up to the desert here?
He told me it was a sophisticated operation run by Bedouins in 3 different countries.
A Bedouin tribe in Sudan picks up people, and then they're transported through the country using vehicles, trucks, 4x4s. There are 3 different stages, and lots of tribes are involved. How do you avoid getting caught with a car full of illegal immigrants and refugees?
The migrants are hidden under piles of goods, such as sugarcane, and the Bedouin bribe police when necessary. He explained that one smuggler can transport up to 4,000 migrants to Israel every 2 years.
How much money will that make you?
He said the trade can make you a rich man.
You can understand why there are so many people involved in smuggling here. It's big bucks. Abu Suleiman says that the head of a smuggling ring can earn as much as $30,000 a month.
Later that night, I was driven deeper into the desert and less than a mile away from the Israeli border.
Our guys brought us to somewhere called a holding house. This is where people are kept before they make a run for the border.
This was the final part of the operation. The refugees were about to embark on one of the riskiest parts of the journey.
We've been told that a group of about 30 to 50 Eritreans will be driven across the border in the next 48 hours. They don't want us to follow, they say it's too dangerous. But our smuggler guide is in the car that's going to transport them here. Salam.
علشان أمان الناس طبعاً بشعر بتوتر لما أمن الناس لغاية لما يعبروا.
The driver was planning how to avoid being shot at by Egyptian border guards.
He'll be driving about 25 Eritreans in the back of this pickup truck. I don't know how 25 people will be able to fit in this tiny space. He says that he's going to cover them with tarpaulin, and then he doesn't know how long the journey will take. He says that they have to take the safest route. That could be half an hour to 4 hours, depending what the safest route is. And he says they wait to get a phone call that the coast is clear. That's when they make a dash for it.
Some of the Eritreans had already arrived in the holding house. Again, most were too scared to talk to us on camera, apart from one who'd managed to get his family to safety. Tedesse was 25 years old and had deserted the army after 5 years.
والله أنا ما حبيت يعني الطريق لما تجي الطريق أساساً كعب يعني بالضبط يعني بزايد لما تجي في كسلة من كسلة كله سهرة في عطش في جوع في ناس بيموتوا في الشارع بزايد البنات في بنات حاملين لما يجوا بيموتوا في طفال بيجوا معاهم يعني العطش بخليك تموت والجوع بخليك تموت يعني 11 يوم دي بالضبط يعني ما حياة كفيفة يعني.
What are you hoping to find in Israel?
يعني أنا بس أخش بسلام إسرائيل واشتغل شوية لما نشتغل شوية نشيع مشارف
Tedesse had left his wife and baby in a refugee camp in Sudan.
Do you miss her?
كتير.
Why did you leave your wife behind to make this journey?
الرحلة دي يعني أنا عاوز أتوكل وحدي. أول شيء ما عندنا درهم عشان نتوكل الاثنين أنا ومراتي. وأنا مراتي دي يعني عندها جنة واحدة صغيرة ما بتقدر تتحرك بالعربية. يعني اشتغلنا اثنين عشان أعقد أنا ولما نعقد وصل بسلامة أشتغل عشان أجيب وحيد.
What do you know about crossing over the border into Israel?
من الدولة للدولة الثانية لما نمشي لازم يكون الطريق يعني صعب جدا شوية يعني يكون صعب لازم يعني بالطريق يعني في ناس بيموتوا ولا ما في ناس بيموتوا في الطريق دي ربنا يعلم.
The route Tedesse was going to take could get him killed. Most of the 260-kilometre border is open, but Egyptian guards have been accused of using a shoot-to-kill policy against anyone found trying to cross into Israel illegally.
Our guides are showing us the main smuggling route. We've just driven off-road and we're driving across sand dunes.
86 people have reportedly been killed crossing the border. Human rights groups claim the number is much higher. The Egyptian authorities deny using a shoot-to-kill policy, but say lethal force is justified to stop illegal activity.
We're right beside the border now. You can see it right there in front of us. And this is how close we are. That is an Israeli village, and that is what they're making their way to.
We crossed over into Israel. Here, the migrants have another dangerous journey to make. If captured within 50 kilometers of the border, they can be handed over to the Egyptian authorities and can be sent back to Eritrea. This policy, known as hot returns, is controversial in Israel, even among its own troops. This soldier was ordered to return Eritrean refugees.
He says that a group of 31 refugees were caught in the morning, and then the evening. This gives you a sense of the scale of how many people are passing illegally through here. They caught another 13 refugees. He says that the refugees were then brought to this tree. They were loaded into 3 trucks, and that's when he understood that they were going to be returned to Egypt. And he said to his platoon commander, I can't do this.
The soldier told us he still faces the threat of court-martial. Israeli human rights groups are now challenging the policy in the courts. We received a call from Tedesse. He'd been lucky. The Israeli security forces had arrested him rather than returning him to the Egyptian authorities.
We've just found out that Tadesse is being held in this prison, but we can't get access to him. I'm just relieved that he's safe. He made it across alive.
Refugees like Tadesse who avoid being hot returned are detained for several weeks while their cases are reviewed. Many are given temporary visas to stay. We headed north to the city of Tel Aviv. This is Israel's business capital and the goal for the refugees. Kidane Isaac is a 25-year-old Eritrean who was smuggled over 4 years ago and now lives here legally. He said many of the 20,000 Eritreans who made it to Israel were now safe but destitute.
Sometimes.
Right, I can see
We can say
that there are a lot of migrants sitting on the corners here.
Of course, they simply expire their time here in this park. Because there is no work, there is no life, they don't have anything to do. And then they just come here and they spend their time sitting together, chatting.
Kidane had managed to get a job working nights as a baker.
My room. And
He now rented a tiny shared room in a flat with 16 other refugees.
this is my bed. This is a friend of mine.
So two of you sleep in here?
Yeah.
He told me he'd wanted to be a journalist, but independent media is not allowed in Eritrea. He'd got caught trying to leave the country.
They tortured us. You know, they are very criminals, you know, they are very cruel people.
You were put in a military prison?
Yeah.
And you were tortured?
I was tortured, but I managed to escape.
Kidane was badly beaten and electrocuted.
How long were you in the prison
For
for?
4 months. And one day, we just managed to escape at night. And we just ran out of... and just there, he's standing, the guard is standing, and we just ran and shoot a lot of fires at us. But fortunately, we were not hit, and we just managed to escape.
In his spare time, Kidane helps new arrivals. He told me that in recent months there'd been a disturbing new development. Some Bedouin smuggling gangs had started to hold refugees for ransom, extorting cash from relatives who already lived abroad. Men had been killed and women raped.
Kidane's just brought us to a charity-run health centre. He says that it's the only place where refugees, migrants can get health care.
In the past year, this clinic has been treating Eritreans who say they've been abused at the hands of their kidnappers. The manager, Raout Katz, said they see 700 patients a month.
What are you finding with people who arrive here?
About a year ago, we've started to find that over 50% of them reported some kind of physical abuse. That varies. It could be some of them were burned in sand. Some of them were, we know about punching, whipping, feasts. People have been chained to one another. That's very common. Many of them report that they've been held together and chained to one another for days and weeks. Also sexual assault, of course.
So how many women do you suspect are being raped?
Roughly 16% of the women interviewed reports being sexually assaulted. We assume that it's at least twice that number, if not more.
At the moment, there's evidence that nearly 200 Eritreans are being held hostage in the Sinai desert for ransom. Kidane had received a tip-off about one such group. He'd been given the number of a middleman who was known to be negotiating on behalf of the kidnappers.
ክንደይ ክኸፍሉ እዮም ዝግድድዎም ዘለዉ
13 ኢሎም አለ ሞታለ
13,000
አጀዘ ከቢለም ዳብ ንስታቆይም በር እንዳ ተባደሉ ኸዱ እናንተ አተሪም ኮኔራም እንዳመቱ አብዘት ያማለ
ይቆትሎም በቃ ይቆትሎም ገለ
ታዳ
እንታይ ትብል ኣለኻ አንተ ክንደይ ቀቲሎም ሎም ማለት እዩ
እዝራን ዘለዘን ዘሪፈም አለው እንደለካለሁ
ካብ 29 ተሪፎም 6 ሰብ ተቀቲሎም ማለት እዩ ዋው
አታት ወላሓት ዘይ ብሎም ስለዝኾኑ ስቴት ይጥቆስዎን ስሜትን ትገለን ሓሚሞም ሞት ገሊኦም የብናን ዝፈልሙ
Another man, who appeared to be one of the kidnappers, then came on the line.
أنتم دايرين شنو؟ أنتم دايرين شنو؟
درام.
أنتم دايرين فلوس كان؟
هاي.
لكن لو قالوا لكم ما عندنا من وين كان بحصل لكم يا أخوي؟
لما ما عندهم يقول لك لما ما عندهم فلوس
أها.
$50,000.
Crazy conversation. I understand that they will kill them if they didn't get the money because they have been taken for several months, I think. Nobody is able to help them.
What are you going to do now?
We will tell the community here, I don't know. But I don't know how to do it because this is beyond our capacity.
We spoke to a relative of one of the hostages. He's already sent $7,000. He can't afford the full amount. All 23 people in this group, including 3 women, are still being held. Kidane said many Eritreans were being kidnapped. He introduced me to Sion, who'd arrived 3 months ago after being held for ransom.
Can you tell me what happened?
تأثيرنا سبب سكم زايدنا أبزي سنسل بمفتح تتعاد كله كزرقة حيدخل نقرها هم زايدنا تريدنا 4 سبع هذا قدوار مالتيو بالشين ساعة 4 تنايم مشت لو ما أنت تشين كنت صباح ساعة 4 تشين هذا قرنا بزاي تخزنا مفتح غيره فتح حلاته أبغى شنتي أمدي فتحوها قد أنتي أنا ما فاتح برزح زي الحزب حنت عيش مالتيو بس حنتخو من درياتها.
Her family, friends and family had to sell everything they owned to pay her ransom. That's over $12,000, which is
Very huge.
a very huge amount in Eritrea.
Yeah, very hard to find that amount.
Would you make the same journey again to get out of Eritrea?
هو كل جزء شجر كا حلا فندي ما تقنيره.
This just goes to show you how bad the situation in Eritrea is and how desperate people are to leave, because despite everything she's been through, Sion has just told us that she would do it all again to get out of Eritrea.
Israel has appealed to the Egyptian authorities to investigate the kidnappings. So far, no cases have been pursued. Israel is now building an electronic fence to keep African migrants out. Yet Eritreans will continue to seek refuge here and in Europe from a regime that tortures and kills its own people. If you want to find out more about Eritreans being smuggled to Israel or any other issue covered by Unreported World, please visit our website at channel4.com/unreportedworld.
Thanks for watching. Click the logo to subscribe for more award-winning documentaries from the Unreported World team. We upload videos every Sunday, keeping you up to date with content from all over the world.